Just about everything these days is a sequel. It's in movies, books, and especially video games, and the majority of them, you have to face it, aren't exactly quite that good. So sequels tend to get a bad name, but they're not all bad, and these are the top 7 best video game sequels ever made. Keep in mind, I'm just talking about sequels, not reboots, soft reboots, or games in the same series that have no relation to the previous one, so basically no Final Fantasy games, and as much as I love Tomb Raider Legend, it's still a reboot. So that being said, let's get it started with number 7, Half-Life 2. The first Half-Life was in itself a superb video game, a first-person shooter that sort of defined linear scripted event-based first-person shooter campaigns, unlike what the past decade of similar games have done, which is make people hate that kind of structure. Well, people that understand the meaning of the word structure, that is. So expectations for Half-Life 2 were big, delays were plentiful, and the payoff was superb. Half-Life 2 brought us the same kind of gameplay. Still linear, still scripted, but with a much bigger emphasis on gameplay variety, on world building, on detail, on just about everything. You had characters, you had story, you had gameplay mechanics based on physics that are still very fun to mess around with today. And the moment-to-moment gameplay of it was varied, was fun, was actually good, something that other companies making single-player scripted event-based campaigns don't really understand. And the technology that it was built upon, the source engine, that let people go insane with creativity in making mods. It's also one of the best games ever made according to every chart about making games that are good. Number 6, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Why Vice City? Well, mostly because this is the sequel that started the whole GTA as something more than just something fun to play. What I mean is that GTA 3, although it did have some interesting story elements, was more of an evolution of GTA 1 and 2, where you just go around and cause havoc and work for the mob on odd jobs. But in Vice City, that changed. In Vice City, you were a character, you played a character. It was the first one to have big names attached to it in terms of voice acting. It put a much larger emphasis on characters, on development of those characters, on the storyline, and on the insane amount of crap you could do in the world. You could own property, you could ride bikes now, you got yourself involved in all sorts of shenanigans with all sorts of weirdos. It wasn't just rampages and insane stunts anymore, it was a world, one that you got to live in, one that you got to dominate. And yeah, San Andreas was bigger, better, larger, grander, but it all started with Vice City. It also had hands down the best radio ever in any GTA game, especially the talk radio. Listen to the interview that Thor gave. It's amazing. You'll laugh your eyes off. Yes, your eyes, because your ass already fell off at the interview with the witch. Number 5, Diablo 2. As I've said before, Diablo 1 was a more intimate affair. It was restrained, restricted, it was small. And it had a lot of downsides in terms of mechanics. It was limited, severely limited. But Diablo 2 just threw that all away. It became grand, massive, sprawling through an entire world, giving you access to diverse classes of characters and a lot of potential fun. Innumerable items to collect, uniques, rares, sets, socketed, gems. With the expansion you also got charms. And we had characters, so many characters with such diverse tactics and skills and abilities. It was a new standard. It was the new golden standard for what a hack and slash looter action RPG-ish thing has to be. And it's still going strong, it's still played today. 17 years later, people are still playing it because it's so goddamn amazing. Sure, it may have sacrificed a bit in terms of atmosphere, but some of the places in game, like the Oasis, the desert, that's still superbly done. It makes you still feel like you're there a bit. And the cinematics still look superb even to this day. Well, yeah, they have aged a bit, but they still look great. Number 4, Portal 2. Some people would say that Portal is a perfect game and adding anything to it, or subtracting, was just not something you could do. You already had the perfect gem. Trying to do something else with it would be like putting a hat on a dog, or whatever that saying is. It just doesn't fit. But Portal 2 did fit. Portal 2 fits superbly and fantastically, and now that dog has inspired millions of dogs to wear hats. Portal 2 amps up the humor, amps up the story, amps up the gameplay. It adds co-op, it adds... Well, to be fair, the main villain of the game, Wheatley, is an annoying piece of crap. But he's made to be an annoying piece of crap. You are made to hate him. Or maybe it's just Steven Merchant, I don't know. There's something about that voice that just makes you want to punch him. But that's the idea. That's actually what the game was meant to instill in you. That this character is annoying as hell and it has to be killed. And it's amazing. It delves into what is Portal, what is this universe. It gives you more of what the previous game just hinted on. It gives you the backstory, the details, it tells you so many things, and it leaves you at the end a bit heartbroken, but happy at the same time. If people say that, well, games aren't art, we know because we eat our own poo, just show them Portal 2. And if they still say the same thing, don't let them near sharp objects, they may hurt themselves. Number 3, Assassin's Creed 2. Let's face it, the first Assassin's Creed had a neat traversal mechanic. You could run around everywhere, and the rest blew chunks. The basic gameplay was crap, super crap, repetitive super crap. The story was it got more interesting near the end, but for the most part, But Assassin's Creed 2 just slam dunked everything. Good characters, good story, much better world, much better gameplay mechanics. Sure, the combat was still kind of the same thing, but counter kill, but enemies could block now, and some of them had resistance. But it gave you so many more options when you actually went for the assassinations themselves. You didn't just have to charge head on and then hope you got away safely. No, you could just do it sneakily. You could play like an actual assassin, not as an old-timey assassin that for the most part died right there after the assassination. No, you could actually plan stuff out. You could be sneaky, stealthy, use poison. It set a standard that the series has been desperately trying to adhere to for years. And while some games have managed to, a select few, the majority of them have been akin more to the first one than to the second one, with repetitive missions that made you just question the sanity of the people that made it, like Black Flag having missions where you had to follow a boat from a distance of about 2 feet, and somehow no one noticed that you were there, like even in a river. What the hell? You know, boats don't have eyes, right? There are people on the boats that can look behind them. But Assassin's Creed 2 had very few of those problems. It had variety, diversity, and quality. Its direct sequel also had multiplayer, but in terms of the basic gameplay, it rehashed the previous one's gameplay, mostly, though I would give it a special mention just for the multiplayer because it was superb. Number 2, Team Fortress 2. Again, one of the most long-awaited sequels in the history of humanity. Team Fortress 2 just rewrote the book. You could argue that this is more of a reboot because there is really not that much it has in common with the previous one in terms of world or story, but Team Fortress 1 was a multiplayer game, so there was no world, no story. But it was a continuation of the idea, a continuation of a game mechanic. Team-based multiplayer with different characters, with different abilities and different skills, different everything. And Team Fortress 2 took that to the maximum possible extent that Valve could do it back then. This became a golden standard. Team Fortress 2 was the new thing to copy for the next decade. And people have copied it for a decade, with varying degrees of success. Namely, Overwatch was the only one that managed. Team Fortress 2 not only gave us diverse characters that actually had character. Like, you had the Pyro, but it wasn't just some guy that had a flamethrower. No, it was the Pyro. You knew what that character was about. A mad, mumbling pyromaniac that's just happy to see things set on fire. You had the Heavy with his iconic Meet the Heavy video. The Meet the Heavy video that defined a new age of gaming. That's how you do storytelling in a multiplayer game. That's how you give a multiplayer only character that has basically no dialogue in-game apart from reactions. That's how we give him character. It defined the idea of giving each individual class a silhouette that's easily identifiable, that's easy to pick up on. It pioneered sound design feedback because you had to know what kind of weapons the enemy had, what kind of classes, what exactly you needed to understand to best play this game. Sure, they kind of ruined part of it with the hats and all the other weapons later on, but hey, even the hats, cosmetics. This is where the insanity sort of started for most games. Most mainstream games, I mean, because free MMOs in Korea and China had it for about a decade before this. But this is the game that started so many things. This is one of the best sequels ever made, without a doubt. But the best sequel ever made is, number 1, Ultima 5. Sure, it may be ancient right now, but Ultima 5 was a fantastic sequel because it did what very few sequels ever tried to do: continue after the happily ever after moment. Not only did it improve things in terms of graphics quite a lot, in terms of storytelling, in terms of characters, in terms of gameplay and world interaction to the point where you could do just about anything with any object and a graphical environment, but Ultima 5 also changed what a sequel can be. It took the idea that in the first game you achieved world peace and twisted it on its head. It took the philosophy that you built in the first game, in Ultima 4 I mean, and transformed it into the basis of a fascist government. And this was back when people believed that saving the princess was the height of gaming storytelling, or saving the princess, but it's all actually a play. Though to be fair, save the president, if you're a bad enough dude, that was actually an excellent plotline. Ultima 5 proved that games can offer the same level of commentary on politics, on society, that every other kind of media can. And it can do it better because it puts you right there in the middle of it. It makes you understand it by making you part of it, which is something nothing else can do, apart from the real thing, I mean. But you probably wouldn't want to be part of a fascist government right now. Well, actually you kind of would be, because if you weren't part of it, you would probably be against it, and being against it is kind of dangerous because it's a fascist government, but that's not important. What is important is that Ultima 5 is one of the best sequels ever made. I would have put Ultima 4 here, but again, Ultima 4 is kind of a reboot of the series, and Ultima 5 is its sequel. One that you, again, may have trouble playing today, so you may as well try some of the remakes, like the Lazarus Project, the one that sort of remakes Ultima 5 in the Dungeon Siege engine. There's a lot of options for playing it right now if you don't care much for how the original looked. So go play it. Go and see what the best sequel ever made to a video game looks like. That is, of course, up until they release Stalin vs. Martians 2. Well, that was it for the best video game sequels ever made. A few special mentions must be given to Riddler 2, System Shock 2, Thief 2, Super Metroid, Knights of the Old Republic 2, Shadowrun Dragonfall, though it's not really a sequel, it's a parallel thing, Fallout 2, though it just improved on the original and not actually tried to change anything, like at all, and of course, Half-Life 3. You know it's coming. I don't care what they say. It's coming. It's gotta be here soon. It must be here soon. Thank you for watching this show. If you enjoyed it, please consider watching some of our other videos and maybe sharing them or giving a thumbs up if you feel like it. And if you really liked what you saw, please check out our Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you could help us make much better shows and get some rewards in the process. Or you could consider buying my book called Tale of Doom. Volume 1 is out now and available for just $2. And as always, if you thought it was horrible, you know where to find me and complain about it.